Quick shout out from our sponsor, Share ID. Are you trying to boost conversions to your Shopify store? Need to drive more customer loyalty? Get results fast by offering exclusive discounts to consumer communities with Share ID. Share ID helps verify students, teachers, military, first responders, and so much more of these groups. With Share ID, you'll get a verified match in seconds. You can spit out an exclusive discount for customers on the spot. Try speaking directly to a new customer segment with this verifiable identity without adding friction to the shopping experience. Continue to drive incremental revenue in the next 90 days post-purchase with more tailored messaging for your email and SMS campaigns. I personally tested Share ID to see just how easy it was to get set up, and I was pretty much ready to go in under 15 minutes. The onboarding was simple enough for me to follow as a non-technical person. Go to shareid.com/Shopify and start your free trial today. Once again, that's shareid.com/Shopify and start your free trial today. Hello and welcome to E-Commerce Uncovered. I'm your host, Matt Lady. Each and every week, I get to talk with and learn from enthusiastic guests, freelancers, agency folks, in-house marketers, and founders, all in an effort to help you bootstrap your D2C brand profitably. We got 2 episodes a week, which will have you staying up to date on the ever-changing industry and learning fundamental concepts and tactics to apply to your brand. Enjoy the show. Today's guest is a lover of metal, going to concerts, and the founder of JXT Group, Menachem Ani. Welcome to the show, dude. How are you doing?
Great. It's a beautiful day here on the Jersey Shore. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yes, Jersey Shore. You've been running Google Ads for, you corrected me before we got on, 19 years now. And so you've seen a lot. You've seen a lot of platform changes. You've done a ton of different industries, but e-commerce is one of your focuses with your agency. So what's a common misconception that brand owners or even agencies and freelancers have about Google Ads and like how to use them for growing a brand?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. I think my thinking has changed a lot over the years as the platform has changed. You kind of have to adapt to really stay ahead. Common misconception, I would say, like a couple of years back, we were probably more hesitant to use things like smart bidding automation, whereas like today, the algorithms have gotten a lot better. They're definitely far from perfect, but I'm a lot more open to trying them, and we've seen a lot of success for our clients. So, I would encourage people to test things, but obviously make sure you monitor and push it in the right direction.
Yeah, there's so much man versus machine, like with Facebook and Google and YouTube and TikTok, all these platforms now. It's like, just trust the AI, trust the robots. They're smarter than you. Well, someone made the machine, right? Like, we're not perfect either. So I understand.
Yeah, I think like for me the biggest piece with it is like you definitely can't just trust the machine, because the machine, like you said, it's created by people, but also it works based on the inputs that we give it. So you really have to make sure that you're tracking your KPIs, whatever measurements, whatever goals you're giving it, is feeding it the right data so that it can make the right decisions. And that's where you'll see success.
Yeah, so it's fitting it the right inputs so you can get the right outputs. So for Google, what are some of those inputs that we're talking about? If I'm a bootstrap founder, I'm like, okay, cool. I know I got to do Google Ads, but like I don't really know where to start. So what are the like inputs you're talking about for the Google Ads platform?
Yeah, so I think like for e-commerce specifically, there's a couple of inputs. One obviously is the conversion tracking pixel, allowing the system to see when an order is placed. And in addition to that, all the other micro conversions along the way, email signups, add to carts, product views, whatever action somebody takes on the website, allow the system to gather that so it knows who's a more engaged user and who's a customer, and it can use that to try to find similar people in its targeting. But on the other side, and this is really important for e-commerce folks, is your product data feed that you're sending to Google Merchant Center. You're not choosing keywords that the system should target in shopping and performance max. So you've got to make sure that your product titles, descriptions, categorization, and all the extra columns, whether it's color, size, style, gender, all that stuff is filled out, and giving the system as much information as it can so it can find who is going to buy from you.
Right. So that's a good starting point. So you make sure you get the pixel and tracking set up so that technically, like, you can actually track and speak from the ad platform to Shopify and analytics and all that stuff. But then also the you're talking about the product data feed and this like shopping feed. So uh, what's something like? Can you break that down a little bit more of like what that means and what that how important it is? Yeah.
Sure. So I think like a common thing that we see is like a brand will be selling a product, and the product page is a beautiful page, and let's say it's a pair of eyeglasses, and it just says something like the collection name on the product page, but like the user looking at the page knows it's a pair of glasses and they see the collection name, and like that's enough. But when you send that data feed to Google, if Google is just getting something like, this is the X collection, it doesn't have the keywords behind it that drive the AI. And so a lot of times you'll have that in the secondary fields and the categorization, the product type, the custom labels, but you really want to make sure that stuff is front and center. Like, aviator glasses for men, that's got to be in the title so the system knows that.
Okay, that's really good to know. So that is you don't have to have that on the product title on your Shopify site. But when you're telling Google you want to put that in. Okay. So it's not just plug it in together and send it off. Like you want to look at your feed and edit it and check it out beforehand.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's a lot of feed columns that can be utilized. Like Google has their own taxonomy, and you can look it up in the help center. There's a category for everything. You want to make sure your products are categorized correctly, that the titles are descriptive, the descriptions are descriptive, and you're basically feeding the system as much as it can to help find you the right customers.
Got it. So that's what you're talking about in the like just a few minutes ago. It's the right inputs and making sure you're giving it the right stuff so it can like serve to the right people. The right people are looking for the right products and help.
Exactly, exactly. And then the next piece that I would layer on top of that is, so first you have your conversion tracking in place so the system knows what actions people are taking. Second, the right targeting. But then lastly, it's what bid strategy you're using and guiding the machine to get you the performance that you want. So like for example, if you're aiming for a certain ROAS, you want to hit a certain, you spend $1, see $2, $3, $4 on revenue. How do you get the system there? And so I find that just especially with a brand new account, you don't want to just jump into it and set it target return on ad spend, target ROAS to 4x. Like you kind of want to start in a way where you allow the system to gather data, typically with manual bids or like a max conversion strategy, just to drive traffic and allow the system to learn, and then slowly switch to target return on ad spend and increase your target KPIs until you get to where you need it to be. So that's the other aspect of it. Like our job is to guide the machines.
Yeah. So don't start off. My first dollar in, I'm gonna make $5 out like right away. Like
Right.
you need more data, you need the right inputs, you need the right tracking setup, and you need time to
Right.
monitor this stuff. And the machine needs more the right stuff to gobble up and like
Exactly.
learn
Exactly.
what is working for your brand and what you
Exactly.
want. Cool. Okay. That's great. So you got the tracking, you got the data feed, and then the bidding and starting out on that. So that's great. So that's how you kind of get started on Google Ads. So, of that being said, when you're kind of your agency like runs a bunch of accounts at Facebook and Google and all these kind of stuff. But when you're auditing a Google account, before you take on a client, whether it's from a other freelancer agency or the founders doing it themselves, like are those the three main buckets you're looking at of like low hanging fruit, or how do you kind of approach that?
Yeah, I mean, so we typically look at a lot more than that, but that's definitely the first place to start is the data, making sure the system has the right data, because if it's tracking wrong, like we've seen accounts where it's tracking revenue twice, so like right away you're way off base, or if the tracking is broken or missing pieces. So we try to make sure that the data piece is as clear as possible and as accurate as possible. Once that's done, it's a lot more onto the strategy side of things, like how the campaign is structured, what type of campaigns we're using, what the budget allocation is between the different types of campaigns, and all that kind of stuff.
So yeah, you're double checking the fundamentals, and then you're kind of going into, okay, like how is the machine working for this specific brand? This brand, they're selling this kind of product. It costs, we know that it costs this much, so we're looking to get this amount of return, and then kind of the account structure, campaigns, ad sets, and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so when you're doing that, what's a couple common things that you're like, this is so basic and fundamental, but you seem to like find over and over and over again, and we're just trying to help people. We're not trying to call anyone out. So yeah, so just like
I think for me, the biggest thing is a lot of times I see people with overly complicated account structures. You know, when you have when you have more campaigns, especially with lower budgets, what happens is you don't have enough data flowing through each of the campaigns. And so, similar to what people might be used to on the Facebook side, like in order for smart bidding to work properly, it needs to have enough data points. And so I encourage people to try to condense and merge campaigns as much as possible, unless there's like a business reason to break it out into a separate campaign. And those, it could be anything for budget allocation, like you want to spend a certain percentage of your budget on a certain product or category. It could be based on location. You want to target a certain part of the country over another part of the country or a different country. So those are like reasons that you really need to break things out. But as typically we try to condense as much as possible to allow the system to have better learnings and be more efficient.
yeah, no, that's a common thing on the Facebook side as well, and like any ad platform. That used to work sometimes, but
Yeah, I
it,
mean, on the
oh yeah,
Google side, even more than Facebook, that used to be important to break it out because you needed that extra level of control, especially before we were as reliant on smart bidding. But for today and the world that Google Ads is in today, it's definitely it can actually hurt performance if you have it too granular.
yeah, too granular. It's like sometimes how I try to explain it or try to like visualize it for people who aren't media buyers and they're trying to understand, like you have like five buckets and you're pouring water into each one, and each bucket gets a little water, and so that's all your different campaigns. And if you just put one bucket there, then you put all the water and the bucket's full. So you're like, hey Google, like here's more data, here's more water to like learn quicker. So
Exactly. I mean, it is important to note that the system does have all that conversion data on the account level, but for whatever reason, the smart bidding, you know, it looks at the overall account level data. It also looks at non-attributable data. So, for example, if your website got 100 orders and only 50 of them came from Google Ads, it sees the full visibility into all of it, and it's got data on those people based on their audiences and the different ways you connect through Google's network. So it's able to use more than just the data in the account, but that campaign's performance does have a larger impact on the overall algorithm.
sweet. Yeah. No. Okay. That's really good to know. That I actually didn't know that about Google Ads. So really helpful there. So Performance Max is a new-ish. You'd know better than me of when it came out, and it's been in beta or it's been rolling out more, and it's now, as my understanding, is going to become like the standard for campaign types. So what's this all about? When did that start, and what's like the biggest changes?
Sure, sure. So until now or in recent years, like if you're an e-commerce store, you were typically running Google Shopping ads, and there's been two types. There's the standard shopping campaigns where you have a lot of control. You can look at what keywords are driving traffic, add negative keywords. You can manually adjust bids if you wanted to, or use smart bidding. And you can see a lot more data within the campaign. A few years back, Google introduced what they call smart shopping, which is pretty much a fully automated shopping campaign. The only inputs you really have is like target these products and try to hit this KPI, get me a ROAS of 3 to 1. And that has actually worked really, really well for a lot of our clients. And just in speaking with other folks, smart shopping really did an amazing job of finding the right consumers at a great price. Um, Google is trying to build on that with Performance Max. So Performance Max, it came out in beta originally over like a year and change. For retail, it's a lot newer, but at this point, Google has fully depreciated smart shopping and replaced it with Performance Max that kind of merges a bunch of different campaign types into one. So some of those are like dynamic search campaigns, which are search campaigns that you don't input keywords. The system just creates them automatically based on the pages you're targeting. They also pulled in local campaigns, which are typically used for more lead gen service providers. And so Performance Max on its own is not a smart shopping replacement. It's one of the functions that it replaces, but it can go a lot farther in terms of exposure and where the ads can show. So shopping campaigns, while it did show ads on, let's say, Google's display network or some of their third-party networks aside from search, it was always building an ad based on the products in your feed, the image, the title, the price, all that kind of information, with very limited exceptions. With Performance Max, it's not strictly e-commerce. You can use it for lead gen campaigns without a data feed, and it can be built in a lot of different ways. And so we're finding that it's a bit of a mixed bag, but it can work really well if you, again, give it the right inputs, going back to our where we started this conversation. But yeah, we find that it can be run in very, very different ways for different clients based on the type of product they have and what their goals are.
So that is a good starting point for Performance Max, and you're mentioning the right inputs. So what are those things? From my understanding and how I interpret this and how what I've learned about it is like you're like, all right, Google, here's all of my stuff. Go pick what works best, and I trust you to like give me the results I want and need. So do you give it text, like images, like what are you feeding into the
Yeah, so one of the main differences between Performance Max and Smart Shopping is, besides for your data feed, which is coming from Merchant Center with all your product information, you create what they call asset groups. So you can create a folder with images, videos, ad copy, kind of all piled together. And then what Google does is it will mix and match and create ads across its full network, which includes Google Search and Shopping, Gmail, YouTube, the Discover feed on Android and the iOS Google app, as well as the Google Display Network. That last part can sometimes drive a lot of spammy traffic, so it's important to make sure that the system really understands what's driving revenue for you. But what's super interesting about it is that you can create Performance Max campaign with a shopping feed only, and then it runs a lot more like Smart Shopping. You can create Performance Max with only creative assets. Don't give it the data feed, just give it videos, images. And the truth is that this is something I don't hear a lot of people talk about, but if you're seeing success on paid social, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, that's something that you should try, because it'll take your top performing images and videos and push it out on YouTube and Gmail and some really good placements. And that could work really well. And then there's Performance Max as it was intended to just fill it all up, give it your data feed, give it all the assets, and let the system go with it. So those are really the three different ways that we've run it. And for each client, we test and run what works best.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm relating it to what I know of Facebook is like ad set budget versus like CBO, campaign budget optimization. Like I'm forcing this audience and this creative, and I'm this budget, just this like this one pipe, and then I'm gonna make a new pipe and like force the budget and like this angles and all that stuff with the audiences. So that sounds similar ish. to Performance Max and what you could potentially do on that side?
For sure. I think that the one large distinction, so with Performance Max, there is no actual audience targeting. You cannot tell the system target this specific audience. The way it's built, and I think Facebook is trying to move towards that with Advantage Plus shopping campaigns, is that you can provide the system signals. They call them audience signals. You can upload lists of your previous customers, your email subscribers, your website visitors, or you can build audiences off of keywords that people who've searched for things on Google, and the system just uses it as a signal for who it should go after. And so it's not pure targeting, it's more of just a seed audience for the system.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, that sounds about right. Sounds very similar. And both Facebook and Google are moving towards these, like you said, Advantage Plus, Performance Max. This, just give us everything. We'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So I know it's supposed to be like more efficient. It's all combined. The robots know more than us at times. So it's tough balance like between the two. Um, but that's where they're headed, and it's more black boxy at times.
Yeah, definitely. And we find that Performance Max is not for everyone. Like for a lot of our clients, we're sticking with standard shopping, using smart bidding, or different account structures. For some clients, we'll have a mixture of Performance Max alongside with regular shopping. It's a bit tricky because Performance Max takes precedence over shopping. So if you have all your products in a Performance Max campaign, it won't serve in shopping. So you've got to segment it and build it out in certain ways. But yeah, there's definitely many different ways it can be set up, and I highly recommend that you test, but have patience to monitor and optimize, and then figure out your strategy based on that.
Okay. So, in terms of patience and budget, what is your? I know this is it varies by client and your budget and the products and all this stuff, but just trying to give a decent starting point for people in terms of, oh, how much budget should I give to a single campaign? Is there a basic formula you have as a?
Yeah, so I think the latest recommendations from Google are setting the budget to be about 10 to 15 times your target CPA. So whatever you're aiming for as your target cost per acquisition, just multiply that by 10 or 15. You can start with less, but that's kind of the framework that they're working with. They used to say 5x. Now I think it's at 10 or 15. But in terms of having patience for it really does depend how much traffic comes through and how much conversion data. But typically, Performance Max can take anywhere from like 2 to 6 weeks to hit a stable place, because what happens is out of the gate, it starts to send a ton of traffic. And because remember, it's got to try getting traffic from all these different channels and networks, search, shopping, display. And when it finds pockets of success, then it sort of stabilizes on that. And so you kind of have to have the patience to walk it through that without making drastic changes, but maybe making smaller changes, tweaking the ad copy, the creative, what products are in the campaign, maybe your bid goal, tweaking your bid KPI slightly, but allowing the system the time to work through all of it.
A quick reminder from our sponsor, ShareID. Find your next lifetime customers by providing verified discount codes based on occupation or life stage. Speak directly to veterans, students, teachers, first responders, and continue to tailor your messaging to them in the future with post purchase emails and text messages. Make them feel seen with your brand by using ShareID to seamlessly verify their email in seconds during the purchase process. Go to shareid.com/Shopify and start your free trial today. Wow. Yeah. 2 to 6 weeks, and even me, I was like, whoa. And I'm meeting, but I know that, like, I know it takes time, but I think a lot of founders, like, it's their baby. This brand is their baby. Their products are their little babies. Like, they're bootstrapped. They don't have a ton of money lying around. Like, to say just like, yeah.
I wouldn't recommend just setting it and leaving it for 2 to 4 weeks, because there is a lot you can change. What I mean is not to change anything that's like fundamental. So like, let's say you don't want to like keep switching your bid strategy between max clicks, max conversions, target CPA, target ROAS. Like, settle on something. Typically we start out performance max on like a max conversion strategy, just drive as many conversions as it can, knowing that it's not going to be super profitable in the first couple of weeks, but it will gather more data, and then switch to target ROAS. But be a little bit like non-aggressive in the beginning, and then slowly incrementally get it to where you want it to go. And then, like I mentioned, there's a lot you can optimize within the campaign itself. So you can run through all your creative assets, make sure that everything is showing an excellent strength. You can run through the insights and see like where the traffic's coming from. Maybe you need to tweak product descriptions, titles. And also, like, if you notice anything that is super off, like let's say one product is driving all the traffic but not any sales, you can exclude that product from the campaign, and so that it focuses on other things. So that there's a lot you can do to optimize along the way. Don't just sit and watch.
No, sure. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. Good clarification there. Appreciate that. So I know we kind of jumped right into Performance Max, and this is where it's going, and like kind of it's not fully taken over. Like it's not Google's not forcing you to only do Performance Max as of right now. They're hinting that's where it's going, I believe, and that's like kind of the only campaign type you'll be able to do at some point. But as of right now, you can still do like what I believe is some of the original like search types. Is like, and so it's a search campaign, and typically, my understanding is brands and media buyers break it down to brand search and non-branded search. So let's talk about that. Like, I want to know what you think about branded search. And like, there's a lot of some people, a lot of controversy around, oh, you shouldn't be spending any on brand search. You should maximize brand search. And so just wanted to like get into that a little bit more.
For sure, for sure. I mean, as you can imagine, that's a conversation that I've had many times. And then as somebody in paid media, my recommendation is to run brand search. I like to think that the reasoning makes sense, but typically we recommend running brand search if your competitors are advertising against your brand name. So if I go to Google and search for your brand and none of your competitors are there, you likely don't need to spend money on paid ads. But usually any brand that has any meaningful level of traction is going to have competitors coming after them. And in that case, we recommend running brand search. However, that's the one place that I typically don't recommend using smart bidding, because if you try to use like a target ROAS or a target CPA bid strategy with a branded search campaign, it just keeps like the mandate is go find me as many conversions as you can within this framework. Whereas in reality, for branded search, your goal is just to make sure you show up as close to 100% of the time as possible. So typically, we'll either use manual bids or target impression share and tell the system, I want to show up top of the page 90 to 100% of the time. And you'll find that it'll get you that search impression share without having to pay crazy costs. And that's typically where it serves your purposes. You show up, make sure nobody's conquesting you, taking over your clients, and you're paying as little as possible for it.
Yeah. Okay. So if I'm understanding and following what you said correctly, if you don't have competitors, you should not spend at all or as much on brand search. Is that right?
Yeah, so if I go to Google and search for your brand and none of your competitors are advertising against your name and your SEO listing is coming up number one, your organic ranking, then there's really no reason to run it. The only time it makes sense to run it is if your competitors are showing up before you by putting ads. So like if you don't run ads, your competitor ads are showing up before your organic listing. That's really where you need it.
Okay. No, that makes sense. So, because even like, there's a lot of people that like see a Facebook or Instagram ad and like, oh, I don't want to click on this ad. I'm gonna go Google it and like find the website myself. It's like, okay, but then they like type it in Google and then, oh, I don't want to click the ad. I'm just gonna go find the listing. So,
So there is another component there, and sometimes we'll have clients that will want to run ads regardless, because you can fully control the copy, the landing page, and all that. So if you're spending a lot on paid social and now people are searching for your brand, even if your competitors are not advertising, you might want to run ads so that you can force the traffic to go to a specific landing page. You can be on top of the ad copy, and if the cost is worth it, it's worth it. So those are the things we really take into consideration.
Right. Okay. Because then it's not just, oh, I have this hero product versus, or I have dozens or hundreds of products. And if they're searching for a specific one, they type in the brand name plus this. I can see how having that like landing page and like that controlling that process would be really helpful. So that's really neat. That's appreciate that explanation. That helps me a lot. So then non-branded search. So that's not your brand name in the search terms. You're say you're selling mattresses, and you want to like bid on those related keywords like organic mattresses or mattresses made in the USA, mattress in a box, local mattress stores near me, all these sort of things. Like that's what non-branded search means. So yeah, we'll talk about the difference between that and like how you think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so non-branded search is definitely important. It's high intent, and there's some keywords that are more long tail and some more short tail. So like somebody's searching for mattress store near me is probably earlier in the buying cycle than somebody searching for Sealy Posturepedic mattress, or whatever is more specific keyword. And so we typically break them out in that way depending on the budget. Typically we try to grab the lowest hanging fruit. The keywords with the highest intent tend to be more long tail. um, but something that we find works really well is Google has what they call dynamic search ads, which again are can be part of Performance Max, but you can run them on its own, where you just give Google the categories of your website, the pages you want to send traffic to, and it chooses whatever keywords it wants. And we find that can work really well, again, as long as the system sees the conversion data coming through. So you just got to make sure that you block your branded search terms by adding negative keywords, so it doesn't just eat up all your brand traffic, and make sure that it only drives like that non-brand or generic search terms. But yeah, those definitely can work well, but you really have to stay on top of it, and add negative keywords, make sure that it's pushing in the right direction.
So my understanding for keywords and phrases is that there's a couple different types you can use. There's exact match and broad match and phrase match. So what ones would you recommend for someone kind of just starting out, or generally speaking, if you're pretty beginner and you're not going to be staring at your ad account like 2 hours a day, right? Like you're kind of doing it, you're checking in on it, you're kind of doing it yourself.
Yeah, so Google has made a lot of advancements to their algorithmic processes and how they match keywords to search terms. In the past, if you would ask me this question 3-4 years ago, I would say stay far away from broad match keywords. Um, in its true sense, exact phrase and broad don't work like they used to. Exact match is the way I like to think of it is exact match is the most narrow. It's going to find keywords that are as close as of a match as possible to what you inputted. Phrase match is a little wider, and broad match is kind of like lets Google do whatever it wants as long as it drives towards your goal. And so for e-commerce stores, it's definitely easier than let's say lead gen campaigns, because the system sees the revenue that it's driving. So it'll start driving traffic for more broad keywords. Either it drives sales or it doesn't. If it doesn't drive sales, it'll slowly take away traffic from those keywords and start shifting towards keywords that are converting, or at least in theory that's how it should work. It doesn't always. So typically, especially with smaller budgets, we recommend just doing phrase match, because it's like wide enough that you can capture a lot of search volume without going crazy. But as you increase your budgets, you'll find that you're capturing all the available searches. You kind of need more, and then we'll start layering on more broad match, which again, as the system has a lot of conversion data, it can do a better job of taking advantage of that.
Got it. Okay. And so if you're just like you're starting small, you maybe have like $100 a day or something, right? Total across the brand search and non-brand search. So would you recommend sort of the like two campaigns or like in two like ad sets in the non-branded? Like what is the
Yeah, so in that specific scenario, what I would do is set up one campaign with only the brand keywords as like exact match and phrase match, target impression share. So capture whatever you can, and then in another campaign, you'll put on more broad keywords, but also just phrase match. Don't go too crazy. But that one, it would give the system guidance and either use a target CPA or a target ROAS so that it can match with what it knows is going to drive your business bottom line. Again, you might need to start those campaigns with a more manual bid strategy or maximize clicks just to drive some traffic, drive some conversions, and then switch to your goal. But you definitely need to stay on top of that one a bit more.
Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. That's a good starting point. It's keep it simple, like reduce the amount of buckets that you have, so your small budget isn't spread out as much. Okay, cool. That makes sense. Um, so one thing, this we're recording middle like November 9th, and your episode should be out next week. Or tomorrow. I forget. Next week. So like you saw 2 weeks before Black Friday. So how do you and just because it's not Black Friday, it could be like any sale or new product launch or holiday, right? How do you think about and change your strategy or thinking or structure? How do you prepare for those sale periods? How do you prepare for holidays and like Black Friday?
Yeah, definitely a good question and super timely right now. I mean, what again, with anything that's using automated systems and AI, you got to be careful not to make changes that are too drastic because it can throw off the system. But at the same time, Google's algorithms have gotten really sophisticated, and they already know, Black Friday's coming, and spend is going to spike, conversion intent is going to spike. So their systems already account for a lot of that stuff. Um, but typically, we recommend like try to ramp up in increments if possible in terms of like budget and bid. Try not to make too many drastic changes. And then in terms of just promoting the actual sale, typically let's say you're going to have a promotion of a certain percentage off. You can add that as an ad extension in Google Ads that layers on top of all your campaigns. So coupon code, and then in Merchant Center, you can set up promotion, save 20% off, use coupon code X, and that layers on top of your different campaigns. But it's also a really good idea to, if you're using Performance Max, to update your creative for YouTube ads, discovery ads, all that stuff. Update your creative to promote those promotions. Um, and Google actually just announced the ability to schedule asset groups in Performance Max in advance. So you can upload your Black Friday sales stuff right now, get it approved, get it ready, and it won't go live till you're ready for it. So definitely try to be prepared as much as possible and take care of all that stuff to promote your sales event.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That makes sense. And it's neat that they're able to schedule those asset groups now, rather than like, okay, I got to upload it and then it just goes live, right? Is that's how it was before? That Wow. That's actually that's a little nuts. Okay. So you mentioned one thing I want to go back on is you mentioned don't just double or triple your budgets and go crazy and change it all too much all at once. You want to slowly like ramp up your spend is kind of what you're saying. So what's a general guideline rule of thumb of what you mean by like ramping up in terms of percentage of spend and over time, like how many days, weeks, etc.
Yeah, so typically we try to do it in like 10-20% increments. But again, it's not always possible. Like, if a client is running a crazy sale Black Friday through Cyber Monday weekend, sometimes you need to triple your budget or more, and it's fine. Like I said, the systems are built, the algorithm is understanding of that, and it does adapt as well as possible. I think like our job is to minimize shock to the system as much as possible. So again, if you have a sale that you need to support, go for it. Just watch it closely. But at the same time, like if it's a sale that's starting earlier, and you're able to ramp up in a slower and steady way, you'll probably be better off that way. And that's what we've seen in like recent sales and promotions that we've run. But again, Black Friday is a very different thing, and Google does account for that in their algorithms.
So how do I want to ask this? So, in terms of these changes to the sale periods, Black Friday, holidays, how important is it to be on the same page with your clients and like understanding what their business goal is and the outcome they're looking for versus just like only, oh, I've updated the ads account, but like how do you make sure you align and communicate and plan ahead to, talk about this stuff ahead of time and not the week, like a few days before the holiday.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you definitely can set up everything last minute, but I find that the more prepared you are, the better it's going to work. And so we typically, reach out to our clients, way before, try to find out what the promotions are, what timeframes they'll be running for, what the sales goals are if there are any, and then, this way you can make budget recommendations or changes to the campaigns as needed with enough time to really see the performance you want to see. So yeah, I think as close as you can get to the business goal, that's the holy grail. Google works best when it's aligned with the business goals.
That makes sense. And then how do you manage, like, oh, we have a new landing page that is for this sale, or for we have a new product coming out. Are you creating? I guess it depends if you're doing like Performance Max or not. But how do you add those new assets in? How do you manage like products going out of stock during sales? Like, how do you kind of optimize during the thick of it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different pieces in there. I think that the easiest part to answer is if a product goes out of stock. Usually Google is updated pretty quickly and it stops serving traffic to it. If it's a high volume website or high volume campaign, you probably want to go in there manually and just kick it out so you don't have to wait for that time lag for the system to update and continue driving traffic. Um, Outside of that, I mean, testing, like if new products are being launched, it really does depend on the campaign setup. So like if it's a smaller SKU volume store where there's only a handful of products, you probably need to build something out to support that a bit more. Whereas some e-commerce stores might have thousands or hundreds of that or thousands of products. In that case, typically the campaigns would be structured in a way that new products come in and go based on category to a certain campaign or something like that. But if it's for like a new product launch that's super important, you likely either want to build out a new campaign so you can allocate a separate budget to it, or a separate asset group, or a separate um, with the new creative and everything to support it properly.
Got it. Okay. I see. I see. That makes sense. So then how big of a change is it? Like, everyone talks about before Black Friday and during Black Friday, or like sales, right? What do you change afterwards? How does that come down? Like, how do you ramp down the budgets? What changing out assets, like client expectations, communication of like, okay, we just ran the sale. Like, we're not going to stay at that same high performance. How do you kind of come down after the sale?
Yeah, so I find that is something that does need to be monitored closely, because while the system does account for sales events like that, the algorithm is supposed to know Black Friday is over, Cyber Monday is over. A lot of times the spend won't come down as fast. And so you definitely do want to be on top of it. And if you see like your top line revenue is really slowed down, and your revenue is still pacing to spend this, your campaign's still pacing to spend the same, you want to take manual steps there to push it down. Something interesting that Google has introduced over the past couple of years is what they call seasonal adjustments. So you can actually go in your Google Ads account under the settings and tell the system, like, I expect my conversion rate to double between this date and that date. And so it layers that onto what the algorithm knows, and it might help kind of slow it down. I'm a bit wary to touch that stuff, except when I know like it's absolutely needed. But yeah, typically I recommend watching budgets closely and adjusting in real time as needed after the sales event.
Sweet. Yeah. That's cool. Seasonal. What you said, a seasonal adjustment is
Yeah,
the,
seasonal
yeah.
adjustments.
Just
And
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, that's super useful if, because a lot of times we'll see a scenario where, let's say, website developer push changes and the tracking broke, and like for 3 days Google didn't see any conversion data. That can really throw off the smart bidding and performance of a campaign. So you can actually tell the system like ignore all data between these days, and it helps. So it's sort of like an extra layer that's not necessarily needed but good to have.
Okay. So you're saying if it's broken like from 3 days ago, I can go back. Hey,
Yeah,
back in time, like retroactively, be like, ignore that. That was a
exactly.
bug. That was an issue. Like,
Exactly.
silly us. Like, don't worry, robot. Like, that wasn't on you.
Yeah,
So keep doing what you're doing. Just ignore those 3 days.
exactly.
Wow, that's really cool. I had no idea. I don't think Facebook has anything quite like that. So that's too
Yeah.
bad because there's always issues with Facebook off and on. Okay, so we're going to start landing the plane here, proverbial plane, on this episode and recording. What is something that's been on top of your mind lately, or something that you thought I was going to ask you, something that you just want to share or jam on the last few minutes here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think obviously Performance Max has been on my mind a lot. Really just trying to figure it out and make the most of it. But outside of that, I mean, I like my brain really just goes to standard shopping is like the true bread and butter for a lot of e-commerce stores. So I recommend don't run away from it completely, especially if you've got a large enough catalog that you can split it and have some campaigns kind of running on one versus the other. But really like understanding what drives new customer acquisition for a client. Is it which of the more specific campaign types, and just trying to dive into that, I guess.
Okay, so if you did have, say, we have a makeup brand, and then they have like lip gloss and eyeshadow and eyebrow stuff, and like clearly I use a lot of makeup. I'm just saying a bunch of words, but so we have these different. Is it different categories like that, or is that too narrow? Is that too large?
Yeah, I mean, it really could be thought of in any way. Like what we'll typically do is try to find like one or two categories that Performance Max is not seeing success in and push those to standard shopping. Or for, some websites only have a handful of products. So taking one or two, either of the top performers, the worst performers, is something that's not spending enough. Maybe I wanted to get it to spend more, and something that you need more of another level of control, so you can kind of push and pull the levers a bit more. It's super interesting to see how different things perform in the different campaign types.
Sweet. Okay, got it. So it could be categories in that way. It could be much more broad and different with like a clothing boutique where it's much
Right.
more varied, of like shoes for shorts and skirts and boots and bracelets and accessories and
Right.
hats and bags. Like there's a lot more variety there. So
Yeah,
that could, yeah,
definitely.
cool. Okay. That makes sense. That's cool to know. Good to know. Appreciate your time a lot, man.
Sure. Yeah, this
Where
was
can
fun.
Yeah, good. Where can people find you if they want to hire you, talk to you, ask you questions? Where
Sure,
do you want
sure.
to point
So
people to?
yeah, so I'm pretty active on Twitter and LinkedIn. Just look me up, Menachem Ani. I don't think there's too many people with my name. You should be able to find me, or check out our website jxtgroup.com. That's our agency. I'm always happy to talk e-commerce, Google Ads, and happy to help.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time and expertise, enthusiasm, and everyone else listening. Thanks for tuning in. Uh, Go check out Menachem's Twitter, LinkedIn, and website, jtxgroup.com. Thanks for listening, and catch you on the next episode.
Thank you.
That's it for today. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. I love being able to do this, continue to learn, and meet people in this industry. Every rating, review, and episode you share with a friend means so much to me, as I'm bootstrapping this show as part of my media brand, High Key Geek. If you haven't checked out my other show, Brand Builders, you should. It's with myself and Tom Brown and Richie Machiko. 2 times a week, we talk in a much more casual setting, and we think out loud, we brainstorm, and we share our lessons as we continue to operate and run businesses in the D2C space today. We didn't exit, we didn't just consult and advise now, and we're in the trenches as we like every day still. So we're learning in real time and sharing it with you as we go. That's Brand Builders on High Key Geek YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever else you find your podcasts. Catch you next time.